Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of In Conversation, my advisor coach. Today in conversation, I have a very dear guest, Mr. Raghav Iyengar, Chief Executive Officer of 361 Asset Management. Welcome, Raghav, to In Conversation today.
Thank you, Suren. Thank you so much. This has been some time in the making, but I'm glad we're finally getting it done today. Really,
Totally
really
our
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Really
Totally our
appreciate
pleasure. So, Raghav, it's been a while. You've been the CEO of 361 Assets. So, just very curious to know how's your journey been and how's your experience been?
it. It's been like you rightly said, Suren, time flies, and especially when you're in a chair like the CEO chair. I think I also just realized once you asked me this question, it's been more than 6 months,
Yeah.
right? And it's been an interesting phase because it's a very different environment from what I've been used to in the past. People who have been with me know that I've largely worked in big financial institutions, ICICI, Axis, etc. So in that sense, 361 optically looks like a much smaller entity. But when I got into the role and I started looking at the data, we have some interesting statistics
Mm,
as a asset business. So we are part of our parent company is a listed entity.
of course.
So 360 Wealth and Asset Management, they manage over 5 lakh crores of AUM. So that number one hits a lot of investors saying that, oh, you're part of a 5 lakh crore group. Because what typically you will do is you will go and Google 361 asset and you will see 12,000 crores of assets, right?
Mm,
Number two, when I looked at the underlying scheme, this is very interesting because under the asset umbrella, we have the listed business and the unlisted business. The listed business, again, optically looks like a 12,000 crore business because of the MFAUM, but actually we are about 45, 50,000 on that, give and take where you're looking at it,
Yeah, yeah,
point
yeah.
to the mark to market, right? And interestingly, we have AUM from mutual funds, which is about 12,000, and our AIF and PMS listed book is also roughly about 12,000. So that's a 24, 25,000 crore book. Now, the other part is that we have some very large offshore mandates. And
Mm,
these are big sovereign wealth funds, pension funds who have actually entrusted us with their India equity allocation. And this is something that totals up to about 47, 48. We also have a very large unlisted book.
mhm,
I think we would be amongst the largest in the private equity space with over 23, 24,000 crores of assets.
mhm.
On the private credit space, we'll be about 9, 10,000 crores. And on the real asset space, we're another about 5, 6,000 crores. So if you put all that together, it's roughly about 84, 85,000 crores.
85,000 crores.
And that's the proposition I've been trying to build in, especially for our
Mm,
third party partners and trying to see how I can fit this whole thing in a box and give it to people who are interested. Right.
right, right.
So yeah, that's been the journey, and of course, it's obviously this is a beautifully regulated business, especially the
Mm,
AMC side, and I think kudos to the regulator because obviously they've made it difficult in terms of obviously the operating processes are so tight. The kind of board committees which are there, the oversight, the fact that we
mm,
have, every AMC has to have a minimum 50%
mm, mm.
independent directors. In our case, it's slightly more. The trustee board has to be 75% independent. Now, each of these individuals that we have within our entity, because we are effectively a foreign-owned entity. I mean, our
Yeah,
holdco is 25% controlled by Bain,
right,
another 45 odd percent by Indian and foreign institutions. And
right,
the remaining 30% is between public and promoters.
right,
So in that sense, the levels of governance are extremely steep here, which is very good for us because it really helps, sort of establish credibility with your final investor.
right.
So getting a grip of all of that has been interesting. That's what the last 6 months has been. And of course, the most interesting part is catching up with people like you, catching up with my partners, catching up with various investors. So that's the fun part actually, right? So that part doesn't stay. That part is very, very close to my heart. Yeah.
I'm sure the journey going forward is going to be very, very exciting.
Oh yes, it's great fun. I think that's important. Yeah. Mm.
So, when we look at 361 asset management, it's a kind of perfect blend of mutual fund schemes and on the alternate side as well. So, what are your
Right.
thoughts in terms of launching products further as we go down the line?
I think number one, Suren, the decision to go not go in terms of a product launch largely rests with our investment team. And I'm quite blessed to have a CIO in the form of Anup Maheshwari. He's been in the business for more than 25 years, right? I think if I
Of course.
count my senses that there'll be possibly half a dozen of them in the industry today. And they've seen the market through its various cycles. They know where pitfalls are coming up. And in that sense, he's my go-to guy whenever there's a product launch to be done. So having said that, there are some obvious gaps that we have, especially in the hybrid space. So if you
Hmm.
see what's happening in the last year and a half, I think hybrids are a good source of good source of money. And given what we are going through in terms of markets right now, especially the last 5, 6 months,
True.
I think it's an interesting place which I think we can do add some value addition to customer.
Absolutely.
So I think my initial thought process is to try and complete the hybrids basket. Right. Right now we have only one fund, which is India's first balanced hybrid fund, and obviously there are a few more that we have in the pipeline. And then around that, obviously we have to have some gold, some silver ETFs. So
Mm.
that's immediately on the cards. Post that, I think once this whole pipeline gets done, which I'm hoping should be done by this calendar year,
Right.
if everything goes fine, then we'll possibly look at equity funds in a slightly more detailed way.
Sure.
And again, that is, like I said, subject to what the investment team is, because ultimately, you know, we are in some sense conveyors of their performance,
Right.
right? And I need the investment team's 150% backing before I think of putting something out in the market. I think
Absolutely.
that's been my learning over the last couple of decades, Suren, is that I think the investment team has to really buy into an investment idea. And maybe
Extremely
sometimes
important.
it makes sense to do what they say all the time. You may raise a little less money because it may not be the flavor of the every idea. So our balanced hybrid fund, just to give you a sense, was launched about 15 months back. It is India's, in some sense, first 50-50 fund. And I know Advisor Coach wrote a nice article about it. I
Mm.
think maybe you should do a follow through, but it's done reasonably well in this whole corrective phase that we're going through, especially in the last 8, 10 weeks. And you'll see that, and it's a great idea. And so something like that, is something what I'm thinking about. On the alt side, I think obviously that's very idea driven.
Hmm.
So we have in the market an early stage fund right now. We're talking to investors about. We've put out a 70-30 fund in the market in our CAT 3, which is 70% listed, 30% unlisted,
Right.
already in the market. We have a healthcare opportunities fund, which should be getting done anytime as I'm speaking right now. So those are very ideation driven. Again, a similar team. Now, what people don't know is that we are blessed to have 4 CIOs in this business. Anup obviously is the one who's very much in the system.
Hmm.
And then we have Samir Nath, who looks after our CIO for the private equity business.
Okay.
He's put together a very, very super competent team across various verticals. So we have people managing early stage, mid stage, late stage, and within that we have people who are domain specialists. So we have somebody for financial services, somebody for healthcare, somebody for IT, and obviously we're looking at something for the consumer tech space, right? So it's a very, very big end-to-end solution. There we have Akash Desai and his team who looks at our private credit business. And then of course we have Neeraj Muraka who looks after our real assets business. So all these people have their own internal investment teams, their large experienced teams. So if I put the entire package together, I think the kind of umbrella that we offer across products, across capabilities is possibly world class.
Absolutely.
So anybody who's really looking at India from a public market space or a private market space, I think one doesn't need to look too far away. Just look at 361.
Sure, sure. So all assets put together close about approximately $11 billion in
Yeah.
all asset
So,
classes.
yeah, 10 now thanks to the depreciation. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
about 10 and thereabouts.
No, no,
Yes.
I quite agree with your product launch thought process because you see, we are a slave to the market data. And it's very, very important that how the market data comes out. And typically in a market situation like this, what kind of products will actually do well?
Correct.
So it's NFO is not being launched for the heck of it. It's more from where the investor will also value out of it.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely correct. I think the easiest thing for us to do last year would have gone and done a, mid cap, small cap thing.
Right.
We don't have approvals. I think regulators also very, very quick in
Hmm.
terms of granting approvals today, provided you meet all their
True.
requirements. So, time to market, they've really shortened it.
Yes.
So in that sense, these things can be done much more rapidly than what used to happen in the
Sure.
past. But just think about it, Suren. Suppose we had launched a mid-cap fund 6 months back. I think I would have had a set of unhappy investors today.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's not something I'm very thrilled about, right?
I agree. I agree.
Mm.
So, what are some of the key initiatives or changes, Raghav, you probably institutionalized since you joined in?
I think very basic stuff. I think obviously it's the standard stuff. It's people, process, product. Suren.
Hmm.
So my 3P approach, if I were to look at it. So processes, obviously we've got a fantastic CRM. through Salesforce. And so obviously we're trying to tighten that a bit, make it a little more AI dominated because there's a lot of data in the background that we can use.
Right.
Fortunately, again, thanks to the regulator, there's so much of data available in the open that you can actually try and get a lot of information out of it
Right.
rather than just look at it statically. So that's in terms of process. Obviously, in terms of people, we have a very small, compact team and largely in about 8, 10, 9 cities. So I'm trying to take that to about 15 cities because India is
Mhm.
really not about Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore
Mhm.
anymore. I think there's a lot of investors, a lot of educated investors who are really able to see value in our products beyond these top 4, 5 metros.
True.
So that's obviously part two, and obviously some amount of distribution expansion is required through some of these cities, and that's where you need to have, if not anything, at least a flag on the ground.
Right.
So just to give you a sense, Gujarat, we were just present in Vadodara, Ahmedabad. Now we are looking
Mm.
at obviously Rajkot, and we're also looking at Surat, for example. Uh,
Right.
uh,
Right.
Maharashtra, we were just in Pune and Bombay. We're now looking at least Nasik and maybe Nagpur. Same thing in the north. We were just in Chandigarh. Now we're looking at Ludhiana, maybe Kanpur. So some of these are very obvious ones, and we need to do that quickly. Secondly, I think there is a fairly large world of digital now. I think today, if you look at digital sales today, there are customers who are really looking at people to funds like ours, especially in the digital medium. And we were this was part of our normal sales mechanism, but we've really got a specialist now and trying to build that business independently of the way we do distribution.
Right.
That's obviously early days yet, so I can't talk too much about it, but I
Mm.
think it's giving me some immediate results in the way that we are talking to some of our digital partners and also trying to build some of our own digital properties. So right now we're in the process of revamping and doing a new website. So if everything goes well, we should be up and running by end of March.
Right.
And so there's some interesting stuff that you'll see there. Lastly, of course, as I said, products. So products we've discussed.
Yes.
Obviously, on the MF side, as I said, we need to do some more work on hybrids.
Hmm.
Lately, equity I'm going to leave it to to Anup and the team to decide
Mm.
on what product to launch at what time. One thing we are very clear, Suren, is we don't want to be a product zoo.
Mm.
We don't want to have 35, 40 funds and everything mimicking each other
Yeah.
just with a separate name and all that. I don't think that's the mandate that our shareholders have given us. I think they
Sure.
want us to have fairly unique, differentiated funds. And obviously, we're using those funds, try and get a share of customer wallet rather than just be a bit mindless and keep
Yeah.
launching
Yeah.
products every month or every quarter. So I think, yeah, broadly, and of course, on the alt side, wherever we think there's again value, like I mentioned, wherever Samir feels there's value, wherever Akash feels there's value, wherever Neeraj feels there's value, we'll do something there. And there I think there's a lot of innovation that's possible
Hmm.
because we're really talking to a very different level of customer there.
Right. 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 No, I agree with you.
Lastly, of course, gift is something that we are really thinking about.
Mm.
I haven't done too much there, but we want to do something. We already
Any
have.
thoughts on the specified investment funds?
Oh, yes, of course. We're all ready. In fact, we're just waiting for the rules to get notified.
Right.
As you know, the Gazette got done
Mm.
month back, and I think the understanding is that the main rules and regulations will come out anytime.
Yeah.
We're already looking at, in fact, we've hiring out a specialized investment team for that product.
Mm.
So who's pretty much already contracted in. So
Yeah.
hopefully once they come in, and hopefully this will come in at the same time. I think it's a great opportunity for 361
Yeah.
because it sort of fits into the brand very, very well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because
It's part of your
361 is
DNA.
this, it's very unique. 361 is this very aspirational brand. Very importantly, I think we'll have to put in a little more effort to take it down to core retail, but especially on the mass affluent and the high net worth and the ultra high net worth, I think there's a fair bit of recognition of the brand itself.
Sure.
And if we are able to tailor products which will suit that set of investors, especially through SIFs, I think it will
Mm.
be a good proposition to have.
Absolutely. In fact, my extension of the question was, what are your thoughts in terms of defining the third-party distribution?
I think they're extremely important. I mean, it's interestingly because the listed business is now actually pretty much, has a 25-30%. So we have a very large wealth team which talks to all third-party manufacturers. Right. In fact, they do some very interesting stuff with their clients, which actually they ask clients how much of exposure they want in 361 asset.
Mm.
So contrary to what the market thinks, that I think a large part of our AUM is from the 360 wealth. I'm not saying there is no AUM, there is AUM obviously, but it's not large.
Mm,
especially on the listed side, right?
mm,
On the unlisted side, given that those products are a little more complicated, we are now starting to see huge levels of, uh, sort of people are able to understand the risks in those funds.
right.
And so hence I'm a little more comfortable taking that out now to third-party partners. And we're starting to get pretty encouraging response there.
Mhm.
And I think it's very, very important for everybody to do or at least understand alternate, Suren, because the world is shifting in terms of P&L. Large parts of the investment management P&L are actually sitting there thanks to their focus on alternate assets,
Right, right.
right? So in fact, there's a very interesting data set, I forget, I think it's by BCG, which talks about the fact that maybe even though AUM is expected AUM in the industry, 2028 is supposed to be 160, 170 odd billion. About 30% of that is roughly supposed to be in alts, but the profit pool is almost 55%.
55%, correct.
If we are truly partnership, which is the way our regulator has made us, that that investor is at the core of the activity, and then obviously the investment management fees or the income is shared out between the distributor or the partner and the manager. I think if you're not in that part of that business, then I think you will miss out on a fairly large investment management pool.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I've been doing a little bit of, just talking to people and saying that, you build a very good core business around MFs. And but fortunately for that, you've got a lot of good investors who understand risk today. And I think,
True.
what we're dealing with in the last 5, 8, 10 weeks is very, very interesting because for every market correction, Suren, the inflows just sort of increase.
Yes.
And I think that's great credit to people like you, advisor, coach, and obviously our partners, because I
Mm.
think they've really been able to temper down panic levels. Because in the past, if you remember when we've been in funds 10, 15 years back, every time there used to be a 2% market correction, we would not be able to have this conversation, for example.
That's right.
We would be answering investor queries or distributor queries, and
Yes, yes,
would be a note of panic in their voice. Today, actually, it's quite different.
correct.
I think somewhere, if we can think on the same lines as far as alternates are concerned, and I think alternate business is very similar place where mutual funds are maybe 15, 20 years back. People who
True.
can jump onto that bandwagon, it's great. And that's why 361 is a great place to be because we can offer you all the strategies.
Right.
So people think of alternate Suryan only as PMS. It's not PMS. PMS, AIF, and mutual funds, and maybe now with SIFs coming, are just different vehicles to get there. But I think when you look at alts, you have Cat 2, Cat 3. And within Cat 2, you have a whole plethora of things you can do. Within Cat 3, the whole thing, plethora of things you can do. And I think that's where you need somebody with our type of experience
Very true.
and product positioning to sort of help you spot the right opportunities.
Right. And I think with the demographics increasing for you with 15, 16 markets, I think it's going to be almost coverage across.
I hope so, because I think that's the initial thought process, but we are happy to expand. I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
that I don't want to be in 100 centers just for the sake of being in
Yeah.
100 centers. I think today you don't need to be. I mean, the Gift City proposition is such an interesting place. So technically, you don't distributor doesn't need to be in Gift City to be able to sell a Gift City fund.
Mm.
So the same logic applies to alts or to mutual funds today. I mean, you
Right.
can today alts people used to be worried about, having so much of paperwork, but I can tell you from personal experience that it's pretty much digital. And that's something which the Association of Portfolio Managers of India, the APME, which is a new, not new, it's actually,
Yes.
okay, it's a relatively new association compared
About
to,
3 years. Yeah.
I mean, and they're doing an excellent job on trying to get digital onboarding in,
Very true.
trying to get standardization. And the same thing happened to me even when I invested in through my AI app, Suren. So
Mm.
everything was beautiful, OTP based, quickly happened, bank transfer online. So
Mm.
the whole purpose of having a branch just to pick up applications and do all that, which used to be a big part of our life maybe 5, 10 years back, is all gone actually. So if you got a good relationship with a customer, irrespective of where the partner is, he can get anything sorted.
Very
Of
true.
course, we've got a very, very good centralized investment client servicing team here, which helps. And obviously, we've got client servicing people across our branches. But at the same time, we have a pretty good set of people in HO. So if anything happens, it's almost like dial a phone a friend kind of a thing. You get a solution immediately online or on the phone, and then you're done and dusted. Mutual
Nice.
funds are right now, frankly, you don't need to be having a physical presence at all. I think
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
so beautifully digitized.
Absolutely.
And it's such a seamless process. And I have nothing but compliments to give the regulator. And then our friends in our third party partners have really enabled that.
Absolutely.
So frankly, Suren, if you do some work around brand and do, maybe more conversations like what I'm having right now, and I'm able to put the 360 brand as a value proposition for our partners, I think that will help a lot. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Absolutely. So, Raghav, through this in conversation today, what message would you like to give to investors, the mutual fund advisors, distributors, about what should they be doing in current market situations?
I think it's, see, I think the challenge, Suren, is that, we both of us have seen too many cycles in our life. So I think we've got a bit tempered about it, right? And, I just go back to my famous compound interest formula, right? You know, it's P into 1 plus R by 100 raised to N, right? And what we unfortunately, or what our partners or everyone tends to focus on is that R, right? I think what I would tell my partners, especially, and more importantly, tell customers is please focus on the P and focus on the N. I think those are the two things which are absolutely in your control. How much money are you putting into investments? And then obviously what time duration do you have?
Absolutely.
And there are products across. So there are 1 day investment funds and there are essentially lifetime investment funds, right? So you can choose. And that's the beauty of our industry today, that we are able to offer a solution from 1 day to practically infinite periods, right? And I think that's where the partner is a very important person, because obviously the customer will get swayed by what's happening in media, and obviously all the stuff around social media and everything, right? But I think the partner needs to really use some level of, and take care of the customer emotionally. And it works always, right? How much of the P has to be put in, and how much of time you have to put in. I think those are the two variables we have in our control. The R, frankly, Suren, is not in our control. I mean, last couple of months, the whole narrative has been around Donald Trump and sanctions and tariffs and all that stuff, right? 1 year back, the narrative was around Ukraine, or 2 years back, the narrative was around Ukraine. 3, 4 years back, the narrative was around COVID and its effect, right? And
Right.
maybe 8 years back, the narrative was around 2013, 14, when we had our taper tantrums, as you call it. 4 years back, 2009, that the narrative was around the whole global financial crisis. And you and I can go on and on about this because we've spent a
Absolutely.
lot of time in
Absolutely.
the industry, and we've
Absolutely.
seen some of these incidents are pretty much fresh in our mind. But one narrative which comes across totally across, that if you got your P right and you got your N right, right? It's you're easily able to ride
You
out.
got the equation
You
right
don't need to worry
completely.
about it. So I
Absolutely.
think that's the only message I like to tell people, that hey, just don't forget that compound interest formula. Forget about the R, because frankly, even though there's so much focus on the R, there's very little that anybody can do about the R,
That's true.
right? What you can do is on the P and on the N. So if you can focus on that, I think hopefully you'll have a much more peaceful and enjoyable investment journey.
Very well said. So for our viewers, this is Mr. Raghav Iyengar, Chief Executive Officer of 361 Asset Management. Raghav, thank you very much for joining in today and
Thank you so
taking
much,
us
Sunil.
through your entire thought process, your journey for the last over a little 6 months, and the thoughts and the product plans and what 361 Asset Management brings in the coming few months and years ahead. Thank you so much for your time
Thank you so
and
much.
wishing you the very best.
Thank you. Thank you.